Want to know what fairies really are? Well, alright, but first we have to brush away the glittery fairy dust and bin the magic wands and leave the stigma of believing in fairies at the door. Through recorded accounts of sightings and encounters, we can discover what they really are, where they are, and why it's okay to believe in them, but dangerous to go looking for them. I'm Kitty. Welcome to Encounters with Fairies. In a future episode, I'll share my own personal encounter with the fairy. But for now, let's you and I strip it all back to basics. So, these fairy creatures, what do we know for sure? Well, we know they are old, ancient perhaps, and their behaviour has proven that, like us, some are powerful, treacherous and deadly, while others are kind, thoughtful and even generous. In the 1940s, a young girl named Jill wandered too far from her aunt's home in the Catskill Mountains and became lost in the woods. Well, she was greeted there by two little people whom she described as looking like dolls, and Jill politely asked them for directions on how to get back home. Never saying a word, they indicated that she should follow them. So she did. Soon darkness fell, and as she walked behind them, Jill saw balls of light appearing to hover around the small beings. Then, she said, time seemed to speed up, like a film being fast-forwarded. The next thing she knew, she was standing in front of her aunt's house. She turned to thank her rescuers, but they had vanished. That's lovely, isn't it? A beautiful encounter. But don't be deceived by this. Acts of kindness from fairy creatures are infrequent and may not be wholly selfless. Let me show you what I mean. It's not uncommon for fairy to, shall we say, borrow a person for one reason or another. Human midwives are known to have been asked to assist in a fairy birth. Lactating mothers have been taken to feed fairy babies. And on occasion, a human man or woman has gone willingly or unwillingly for fairy lovemaking. Well, here's a true G-rated example which occurred in Ireland at the turn of the 20th century. One night, an old midwife was called on with an urgent knock at her door to help with a problematic birth. She gathered together her bag and called out, "All right, I'll be out in a few minutes." When she was ready, she opened the door, and stood before her was a perfectly normal-looking man sitting atop his horse. She told the man to pull over to the stile so that she could climb up the steps to sit up behind him on the horse. Well, this he did, and when she was seated on the horse behind him, she tucked her bag tight up against her belly and wrapped her arms around the man to keep her steady. Only she found no substance in the man. It was as though there was nothing there at all. Well, she felt nervous of him at once, for she knew he was not a right man, and she said to him, "Oh, I forgot something and I must go in for it." "Stop where you are. You need not be afraid. I will bring you back safe again," he said, and motioned the horse to ride on. Well, they rode a short distance, or for a short while, she could not be sure, until they arrived at a fort, and there stood two women who shuffled the midwife into a dwelling within the walls of the fort. She entered a large and fine-looking room, where lay a sick-looking woman in the pains of birthing. The midwife set to work, and soon thereafter she was delivered of a child. The child was taken away, and the midwife relieved of her duty immediately. The two women of the fort sat the midwife down and asked her, "What is your fee?" To which the canny midwife replied, "Anything you like to give." Well, they handed the midwife £3, which was a very handsome sum in the day. The midwife was, of course, delighted, and the two women took her out of the dwelling, then out of the fort, where the man and the horse were waiting for her. Then she was taken directly home, and once alone, the woman took out her £3 and put them under her pillow for safety. She then slept for 3 days, and on waking, she lifted the pillow to gather her money, but what she found was 3 leaves. That was her payment from the fairies. This is a great example of the complexity of interactions with fairy. They are often fraught with danger, and humans are often damned if they do and damned if they don't. In future episodes, we'll explore the reasons why accepting payment or food from fairy can be so dangerous, but not accepting payment or food from fairy can be equally dangerous. Why thanking fairy or greeting fairy or even giving a gift to a fairy can lead to serious repercussions. It can be a minefield, but I'll guide you through it. Now, let's turn our attention to my favourite and one of the most powerful of all fairy, the Banshee, the harbinger of death. Before the last World War, nothing could be heard for a week of nights but the crying of banshees. So it is said that the people knew there was going to be a lot of bloodshed on those battlefields. Banshee cried for the things to come. This account came from County Donegal in the north of Ireland. Imagine the horror felt by those listening to the banshee's wail coming from the darkness night after night after night. It would have been like nothing that they had ever heard before, and they understood that it signalled a wave of impending deaths. So you can see from these few examples that the character and behaviour of fairies varies wildly. They simply cannot be contained within a stereotype. I have some brilliant videos lined up for you. These feature encounters with fairy trees and forts, fairy food, fairy rings, fairy wind, as well as exploring fairy connection to animals such as cats and dogs and hares, and their intrinsic bond with the natural world. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, stay curious and be kind. Cheerio!